start by talking a little bit about Vision Quest 2020, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is really just dedicated to changing children's lives by addressing what you will soon see is a public health dilemma of undetected vision disorders in children. So we provide training to schools across the United States as well as vision screening organizations with regards to how to vision screen, which includes the use of EyeSpy 2020. Sometimes it helps to put a face to a name, not in all cases, but perhaps it'll be helpful. I have the privilege of being the co-founder of Vision Quest 2020. I'm also the CEO of Cloudscaper, which is the technology company that developed EyeSpy 2020. And I'm I guess an engineer by degree, so I'm definitely a software geek. I've worked in several different industries, but all of them pretty much led me to what I do now, which is primarily focus on the nonprofit organization as well as the development of technology to help children. So we've got a few things that we're going to talk about today. It looks like a long list, but we'll hopefully get through this pretty quickly. And like I said, please stop me at any point if you have any questions. So the first thing I want to talk about is the impact of vision problems. And I apologize in advance because there is a very strong probability that I am preaching to the choir when it comes to this particular topic. So I won't belabor the point, but suffice it to say that vision problems are both prevalent and severe. Up to 25% of children have a vision problem. And again, I don't have to tell any of you that vision, not the least of which is academic. To add insult to injury, unfortunately, the statistics bear out and show that children that are already experiencing problems in school or are socioeconomically depressed are disproportionately affected by vision problems. And so we're not entirely sure why that is. There's a lot of speculation. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. We just know that it's a huge issue among those populations. So I'm going to share with you a couple of studies just to, by the way, all the information that I'm sharing with you, if you want hard copies of any of this material, just let me know. Anyway, out of the 25% of the children that have a vision problem, the vast majority of those children are actually uncorrected, because what we find, so we have 25% of children that have a vision problem. 20% of children have uncorrected vision issues. So 20 out of the 25% of children with a vision problem are uncorrected, which is unbelievable. That means 80% of the kids with a vision problem are not being detected or corrected. As I alluded to just a few seconds ago, vision is integral to the learning process. So 80% of what children learn during the first 12 years come through the visual processing of information. I want to say something very quickly. This is not to say that a child that is blind cannot learn, because obviously if we know that a child cannot see, we have various modalities by which we can teach them. What I'm talking about is when we don't know that a child can't see the front of the classroom, and we don't make accommodations. We either don't correct their vision or we don't have other accommodations for those children. That's where the travesty occurs. And as such, vision problems, and again, many of you may be able to actually tell me more about this, but there's absolutely no question that vision problems, according to this study and what you all may see on a day-to-day basis, can easily be misunderstood or mistaken for learning problems. Here's another study, and I won't get into a whole lot of detail here, except to say that certain vision disorders can either exasperate or be confused with attention-related disorders. And that's the extent that I will say there. But this is becoming a hotter and hotter topic in the medical community, because when you treat a child for ADD or ADHD with psychotropic medication, when in fact there's not a brain deficiency, it has detrimental effects. On general health, it's interesting. Children that have a chronic hearing and or vision condition have an increase of 50% in obesity. And I guess it kind of makes sense to a certain degree. You know, you get home from school, and if you really can't participate with the world around you visually or audibly, you're more likely to stay indoors and not get the exercise perhaps that you need. So the prevalence of obesity goes from 12.2% up to 18.4% to 50% increase, which is obviously problematic. Here's another study out of the Journal of APOS, and I'm going to refer to the Journal of APOS in a couple more minutes, but this is the blue ribbon peer-reviewed publication for the American Association of Pediatric Ophthalmology and Strabismus, which we abbreviate APOS. Here's another vision condition referred to as amblyopia, commonly known as lazy eye, or referred to as lazy eye. And here's a study that shows that amblyopic children read more slowly. And again, preaching to the choir, but that's hugely problematic for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is third grade reading assessments, where we determine whether or not we can advance children. And there's all types of metrics that occur in third grade that are adversely impacted by poor vision. The last study I'll share with you is just something of particular interest from my perspective, because although there's a lot of very good arguments to be made for vision screening children for academic performance in general health, it's just the right thing to do, the state of Michigan every several years goes out and does a study where they look at the return on their investment for all of their publicly funded preventative health programs. And every time they do the study, they find that vision screening offers the highest ROI. Now, I am not suggesting that these other programs don't add value. Of course they add value. But when we're talking from a strict ROI perspective, vision, because of its high prevalence and its severity, offers the most significant return on their investment. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is that vision screening is important. So how have we done vision screening? Well, unfortunately, now some of you may very well use a very standardized approach. So this is not specific to any particular individual or organization, but in general terms, what has been very well documented is that there is no standardized approach. Eye charts are by far the most common method, but they require an extensive amount of training and in some states certification. As you may very well know, if you're using an eye chart, it relies heavily on human interpretation to get the result, the vision screening result. And it's fairly laborious to keep records and do the reporting when you're using a wall chart. Again, preaching to the choir, I'm sure. So this, in fact, is perhaps why vision problems are so often missed. When you use a wall chart, it's a static document, so children can easily peek or memorize the chart. And I'm sure many of you have actually witnessed this happen. And then, you know, like I said, you got to be really trained on how to use a wall chart in order to get an accurate and reliable result. Now, fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, but there is a standard way or a protocol, a set of rules in order to use a wall chart effectively. This protocol is referred to as the Amblyopia Treatment Study Visual Acuity Testing Protocol. So it's a mouthful. It's commonly referred to as the ATSP. And it is a very comprehensive approach, set of rules to using a wall chart to assess a child's visual acuity. So as you can appreciate, there's 9 pages or whatever on the screen, and this would have to be committed to memory and then executed perfectly each and every time. And when you do that, it takes between 10 and 15 minutes per child to assess their visual acuity. But you end up with a very reliable resulting process. Now, from my perspective, that's a significant shortcoming to using a wall chart, and I'm sure most of you would agree. However, despite that shortcoming, okay, the American Academy of Pediatrics, in a joint committee policy statement along with APOS and the American Academy of Ophthalmology and the American Association of Certified Orthoptists, so all of these medical organizations led by the AAP got together. They do this every 5 years, and their recommendations have been consistent throughout the years. So I'm going to share those with you. Starting on the bottom right corner, you'll see a Welsh Allen or a PediaVision spot device. And I'm going to talk about the difference between subjective and objective in just a second. But that is an objective device. It's a camera. And what the Joint Committee said is, look, you can do this electively on children up to 3 years of age. Then, from children from 3 to 5, the spot device, or not just the spot, but an instrument-based screening, is an acceptable alternative up to age 5. But for children above 5 years of age, they want you to do a subjective vision screening, which is either the wall chart or what you'll see in just a few minutes is EyeSpy 2020. Now, why is that? Why, despite the shortcomings that we just talked about, particularly with a wall chart being a static document that children can peek and memorize, and it takes a long time, and it's very time-consuming to do the reporting, why, after all those shortcomings, do the medical professionals still recommend a subjective screening? So I want to talk about that. So let's start with objective. So objective, or commonly referred to as like instrument-based, so you can see the Welsh Allen SureSight, their new spot device, or the Plus Optics on the far right-hand side. All of these are very good devices. But what they do, just to let you know, is they take measurements of the child's eyes and they evaluate for risk factors. So they don't really, quote unquote, look behind the child's eyes. And I'm going to talk about why that's important in just a second. A subjective screening is what happens when you go to the optometrist or ophthalmologist, right? They sit you down in the chair, they put the phoropter in front of you, and they have you read a chart. They may change the lenses, right? A or B, B or C. I'm sure we've all been through that. I know I've been through it. But these are subjective techniques, whether you're going to the eye doctor or whether you're using a wall chart. And what you're doing with a subjective vision screening is you're evaluating the entire visual system and really answering one question: can the child see? Now, to administer a subjective screening takes a lot of training and, again, a lot of human interpretation and time. Now, diagrammatically, what does this look like? So a camera looks at the child's eyes. An instrument or an objective screening looks at the child's eyes. Whereas a subjective screening looks at the entire visual system in totality, not just the eyes, but also the optic nerve, all of the wiring to the vision center of the brain, and even the cognitive programming of the vision center of the brain. So that's why the medical professionals say you got to do visual acuity, or at least a subjective screening. What we tried to do with EyeSpy was combine the best of both worlds. where you have the speed and simplicity and elegance of an instrument, but you get the medical efficacy and recommendations of a subjective vision screen. So that's EyeSpy in a nutshell. From a child's perspective, you can see these children playing the game. They sit 10 feet away from the computer, and they're playing a video game. And in the process of playing the video game, the protocol automatically assesses the child's not just visual acuity, but also their depth perception and color vision. And then on top of that, it automates the data collection and the reporting of the screening results, or at the very least, simplifies it. The reason why that's so important is because EyeSpy was not designed or built in a vacuum. When Cloudscaper began to develop the product many years ago, we involved and invoked the input from hundreds of educators, from administrators to health professionals to the teachers themselves. We wanted, and by the way, the IT people, they're critically important. So we got focus groups from educators across the country. And that's why EyeSpy does what it does, because we wanted to know, what did the schools, at the end of the day, what did they want and need? So EyeSpy 2020 as a solution is important. There are some qualitative characteristics that are important. One, the game, for lack of a better term, is completely randomized. So children cannot cheat or memorize the vision screening process. The screening protocols are completely automated, computerized, medically validated, which I'll talk about in a second. So as an administrator of the vision screening, you don't need to be certified or even really trained. You'll see the training is quite minimal. So it's very fast, obviously cost effective, because identifying children with vision disorders is hugely beneficial, not just academically and psychosocially, but also financially. And like I had mentioned, it automatically. This is kind of a bulletized summary. A couple things to the reports are relevant. Honest with your license to your school, your district, you can install EyeSpy on as many computers as you want. There's no limit. From the child's perspective, it's really a fun video game. And that's important because it engages them psychosocially, and it really is designed to remove the trepidation that children have about the vision screening process. Unlike the cameras, if you really can't break it. It's a piece of software. So if a computer breaks, you just download it and you're back up and running. So I want to talk about the medical validation for just a second, because unlike a wall chart, which cannot be medically validated, by the way, because it's human dependent, right? It completely depends on who's administering the test. What we did with EyeSpy was we sent the program to the Medical University of South Carolina, where they have the Storm Eye Institute. It is one of the top 10 ophthalmic clinics in the world. And what they did is they recruited Boy Scouts to use EyeSpy on standard off-the-shelf laptop computers to determine the efficacy, the sensitivity, and the specificity of EyeSpy 2020. And this paper this was published in the Journal of APOS, which I referred to earlier, and it's available on our website for you to peruse if you so desire. But in the results section, this is what they say. EyeSpy screening results using a patch were not significantly different than those of a professional examination. Now, that is quite a statement, and I don't know that we were necessarily expecting that. I do want to clarify one thing. EyeSpy 2020 is not, nor will it ever be, a replacement for a full eye exam. There is nothing better than an optometrist or ophthalmologist examining the eyes, because they actually use an ophthalmoscope. They dilate the eyes with pupils, and they look, with at the retina to see if there's myelinated nerve fibers, or God forbid, cancerous cells or anything of concern that we simply cannot do. So I'm not advocating that EyeSpy 2020 replace a professional eye exam. But when it comes to identifying children that have a vision disorder, EyeSpy 2020 does an incredibly accurate job. I'm about to show you a demo of EyeSpy 2020. But before I do, I just wanted to talk about the vision screening data just a little bit, because one of the things that the schools asked us to do was not just provide an accurate, reliable, fast vision screening. They also appropriately wanted EyeSpy 2020 to manage the data. And that's exactly what it does. For every license of EyeSpy 2020, you are provided your own centralized HIPAA-FERPA compliant database that we maintain for you in perpetuity. And in that database go all of your vision screening results, which you can access 24/7, like I said, in perpetuity. So you have the individual screening reports that are available to you. You have summary reports. You can dump your data into Excel and do with it whatever you deem appropriate. And you can also export the data into other secure databases. So I just wanted to mention that to you before I actually move on to showing the demo of EyeSpy itself. And I don't see any questions popping up in the chat box, which I fear means I put all of you to sleep. So I apologize for that. Again, stop me at any point. So this is EyeSpy 2020, and you can see it's a fairly simple interface. We're going to do a vision screening, and I'm going to essentially do one of two. Well, there's two ways to do a vision screening. One is you type in the information manually. So say I was going to vision screen John Doe, and I can just type their information in one at a time. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, and plenty of schools do that. The other option is to import your data into EyeSpy 2020. Now, what do I mean? Specifically, if you bring in your student roster, which is easy to do, then instead of typing the information in, you can basically just access all of your students with the click of a button. So let's say that I was looking for a particular child. So I'm going to say Riley. And let's say that I also happen to know the teacher's last name, or I happen to know what grade they were in. So what I'm saying here is that you can filter this list. See, let me back up real quick because I don't want this to be overlooked. Right now, if you look under student selection list, it says there's 1,876 preloaded students. Okay, 1,876. Well, I don't want to scroll through this entire list. That would be very time-consuming and wasteful. So all I'm going to do is say, well, I know that my child's in, the student that I'm looking for is in 3rd grade, and more specifically in Clark's classroom. So now instead of having 2,000 students, I've got 29 students from Clark's 3rd grade class. And now I want a vision screen, let's say Kara. And by the way, these are all fake names. So this is all just fake data for demonstration purposes. All I did was double click on Kara. And now all of her information has been populated for me. The only thing that I have to do prior to the vision screening process itself is determine whether or not, in this case, Kara is wearing her glasses or forgot them or lost them or has never been prescribed glasses. So in this case, I'll say she's wearing her glasses, and we can talk about color vision. Hold on, a question came up from Daniela. You say you want to keep the data, but the instruction guide says that we can use the software offline too. Very good question. Wow. I'm going to stop very briefly to answer Daniela's question. It is outstanding. Daniela, you are entirely correct. The computers do not need to be connected to the internet during the vision screening process. And the reason for this is because this program is in use around the world where access to the internet is not ubiquitous. So you are entirely correct. EyeSpy does not need a connection to the internet while you're vision screening. All of the data is encrypted and stored locally until such time that you do connect to the internet, and then you would launch EyeSpy, and then all of the data is then sent up to your HIPAA cloud. So I hope that answers your question, but if not, go ahead and type more into the chat box, but hopefully that answers it. So during the vision screening, no internet's required. And then subsequent to the vision screening, then you would connect your computer to the internet, upload the screens, and that's how you would access all of your data. Because you might have 20 different computers doing vision screenings at any given point in time. Well, you don't want to have to find, in this case, Kara Black's record on the specific computer. Okay, should we get permission from parents then? That is again, another good question. I would say this. In general terms, I am a fan of engaging with parents if I'm going to be vision screening their child or doing anything else, taking them on a field trip, whatever the case might be. Every district is unique with regards to what they require or what their protocol is with regards to parental permission. So, for example, we have some districts that do a blanket opt-in, opt-out at the beginning of the year. And then we've got other schools and districts that are very specific and get permission for every specific activity. We have some schools that do opt-in, and we've got other schools that do opt-out. In other words, you agree that we're going to do this unless you specifically opt out. We've got other schools that say, no, you have to physically or from a signature actually opt in. So I can't answer that question with regards to parental permission, but what I can say is that whatever your school or district's policies are regarding that, the way that you do vision screening right now, I would follow that same policy and procedure, because EyeSpy is really no different with regards to, hey, we're going to have your child read an eye chart. That's what you're doing with EyeSpy, is you're having them read an eye chart. It just looks like a video game. But again, if you want more specifics or you want to have a further conversation about this, we absolutely can. But those are two very good questions. Thank you for that. Okay, you are welcome, Daniela. Okay, so with regards to testing color vision, I just want to say this. The prevalence of color vision deficiency is about 1 out of every 20 boys. It's about 1 out of every 200 girls. Now, although Kara is a girl, we are going to test color vision only for purposes of demonstration. In general, I would only color test boys, and I would only do it once, because color vision is not treatable, and or color vision deficiency is not treatable, and it also doesn't change. So once you vision screen for color vision deficiency, you don't have to do it again. So, for example, the protocol might be, we're going to color vision screen all first grade boys. And that would be the protocol unless they're coming into your school brand new. Or if you had a parent or teacher that said, you know what, I want you to vision screen Kara for color vision deficiency, because when I ask her to, identify the green square, she doesn't, or something like that. So you can always turn this on or off. So anyway, Sorry for the diversion there. But now we're going to screen Kara. So I'm going to hit the begin, or I'm going to click the begin screening button. So here's a little note says, are you sure you want to check color vision? I'm going to say yes. So as you can see, if I've never done a vision screening before, one thing that's nice is that it tells me right from the beginning exactly what to do. So in this case, it says, make sure student is wearing her clean corrective lenses with no eye patch or colored glasses at this time. Press enter when ready. This is all going to make a lot of sense in just a few minutes when I show you exactly what the supplies that are provided to you are. But that's what it's referring to. So Kara is sitting 10 feet away from the computer, and she's got now control of the mouse, and she's moving back and forth, and you just tell her, go ahead and select who you want to be. So we're engaging the student a little bit differently, and Kara decides she wants to be the blue-haired boy or girl. And now you'll notice that there are letters being displayed at the top of the screen, and 99% of the time, the kids just know what to do. They move the mouse, they line up, and they click. Now, if they don't know what to do, then the game is going to essentially detect that. So, but you can tell them what to do. What I typically do, just to let you know, is when I vision screen, I start with the older children, and then when I'm at the end, let's say I start with 3rd grade, and then when I'm at the very end of the 3rd grade class, I'll bring in the 2nd graders or the 1st graders so that they can see the older kids playing. And so, anyway, just that's may be of interest to you. I'm not saying you have to do that. You'll notice that the optotype at the bottom of the screen has gotten smaller, and it does this automatically. Now, what it will do, if the child gets the answer wrong, for example, you'll notice the optotype will change, but there was no animation. You'll notice that there was no animation. So the child, it's not negative reinforcement, but they don't get the positive reinforcement as if they had gotten the answer correct, like jumping up. The other thing is that the optotype at the bottom of the screen will get bigger or smaller depending on whether or not it's reinforcing the child, like going back up the chart. If you think about going back up the chart 1 or 2 lines, this will do that for you automatically. Now that Kara has demonstrated that she understands the matching game, she understands the concept, and she also had the minimum necessary visual acuity with both eyes open to continue testing. So one thing that EyeSpy 2020 does is it stops the test as soon as we know that there's a problem. In other words, it's not a diagnostic tool, it's not a therapeutic tool. It's designed to, as quickly as possible, identify the children that need to be seen by the eye doctor. So now it says, put the patch under the student's, under her corrective lenses. So that's what we're going to do. So now we're testing the right eye. And you'll notice that the test just picks up pretty much right where it left off. We're already down the critical line. And so now Kara is just going to go through and match the optotypes. And the reason why I'm just going through this quickly is because I'm sure you guys have already gotten the concept and don't need me to belabor any of the points. Now we move the patch over to the right eye. So now we're testing the left eye. So we're just going to continue through the test. Again, we test visual acuity with both eyes open, and now we're testing each eye independently. That's how we can pick up things like eye suppression, amblyopia, strabismus, various conditions, neurological dysfunction that would impact one eye more than the other. So now we're going to remove the patch because the instructions tell us to. The student does not have access to the keyboard. So the child can click and do all these things and nothing's going to happen. It's not until the proctor says, okay, I've removed the patch, corrective lenses are on, and now we're going to proceed with the color vision screen. Now, it's the same idea. It's the same matching motif. So there's no confusion for the child. I see a circle, I find the circle, and I click it. The first two plates that were shown can be seen by someone with color blindness. The next color palettes that are shown cannot. In other words, you cannot be colorblind and discern that that's a house. And by the way, I know we're doing this over the computer, so depending on the size of your screen and resolution and all of that stuff, you might not see the shapes, and I apologize for that. But when you play it in the game, you'll see these color confusion palettes. The shapes are visible. So now it says to remove the patch and place the colored glasses over the student, and you'll see what those colored glasses are in just a minute. These are random dot stereograms, and unless you're wearing the colored glasses, you're not going to be able to see the shape that is popping out of the screen, okay? So you can't guess your way through those random dot stereograms. Now, what are the random dot stereograms doing? They're actually assessing depth perception. Now, the question is, because just to let you know, I did not pass stereo. I did not have the red-blue glasses on. I couldn't guess. I got it wrong. But if you look at the report, and I did that intentionally, by the way, because I want to show you something that is critically important about EyeSpy. One of the things that makes it a true differentiator is that every test is customized in real time, and we work very hard to not over-refer children. So if you notice on the report, it says and I'm sorry if you can't read this, but basically it's not referring the child to the eye doctor. It's saying the vision screening was normal, health screenings are important, but do not replace professional evaluations. Under visual acuity, it says both eyes open, pass, right eye pass, left eye pass, color vision pass. It does not mention that I failed stereo. And you might be thinking, well, that's wrong. Well, it turns out that we would only refer for failed stereo if the child was not already under an eye care professional's care. And so what I'm saying is that we do not want to refer this child. We know that Kara, she's already being seen by an optometrist or ophthalmologist because she's wearing prescriptive lenses, corrective lenses. The fact that she failed stereo is not reason enough to send her back to the optometrist. Having said that, if she did fail visual acuity, then we would. So what's nice about the program is that rather than trying to manage these very complicated referral criteria and protocols in your head, or worse, try to train other staff how to do all this, the program is doing all of this for you. It also stratifies the referral criteria automatically based on the child's age. So all of these things are computerized and greatly simplified. And by the way, I know it took a long time for us to do the test because I was flapping my gums, but you'll see in real life, the average test is 2.5 minutes long. Some of the kids, do the test very quickly. In fact, they get referred very quickly. And then depending on what suite of tests you're doing, it, take 2 or 3 minutes. Some tests will take 3 or 4 minutes. But the test is determining how to expedite itself to get you the most accurate, reliable result as quickly as possible. I had previously mentioned this, but if you press the S key for Spanish, the report is translated into Spanish for you, or E for English. So that's the first thing I wanted to share with you. The second thing I wanted to share with you was the reporting. And we're almost done, so thank you for hanging in there. So you've done your vision screenings and you've connected to the internet if you weren't already connected to the internet. And now your reports are up in the cloud and you want to access the reports. By the way, if you're not connected to the internet, you can still access your reports but you can only access the reports that were conducted on that computer during the time that you weren't connected to the internet, because they're stored locally, right? Then once you connect to the internet and those reports are offloaded from the computer, now you don't have access to them if you're offline. You'd have to get back online, and now we can access the data. So the first thing we have to do, because this system will hold your data, like I said, year after year. So rather than just show you tens of thousands of vision screenings that you've conducted over the lifetime of the use of EyeSpy, you select the date range. You can do one of two things. You can say, hey, my school starts in August, or my school starts in September, and it'll show you from last September, which is this most recent September, and it will show you through today's date. You can also type in the date range manually. So I could say, hey, I want to look from February 1st of 2018. And now I want to look at all those screenings, or the most recent screenings, whatever. Now, because this is only used for demo purposes, this is all fake data and there's not very much of it. But I can recall any vision screening I want. So just like with the student selection list, I can type in, let's say I want to look for Kara. I could type in a couple of initials, or if I wanted to look at just those children that failed for, let's just say, for a particular grade, I could do that. And now I could generate this list by saying print summary report. And now I'm just going to print it to a PDF so that I can show you what that report looks like. So bear with me. I just wanted to show you what the summary report looks like, because it's kind of a nice, I think, very simple report. It says it is a summary report. These are the dates. This is how many records. This is when you created the report, the name of your school. And then it tells you what filters you had. So you had a filter of all the children that didn't pass in first grade. Gives you the screening date. You can see the information that's on there. A couple things I want to point out about the pass. You'll see that there's a couple of different results here. One is refer. What is that versus a fail? A fail is when you fail the vision screening. EyeSpy determines all on its own that you have a potential vision problem. Refer is a little bit different. Refer is when the child is actually being vision screened and the individual proctoring the examination, it's not an exam, but the vision screening, says, you know what, I'm going to stop the test and I want this child to be seen by an eye doctor. An example of that may be a child that has nystagmus, where their eyes are stuttering back and forth, the child is frustrated, or they're crying for whatever reason, and you say, I don't want to frustrate this child any longer. I know there's a concern. I'm going to refer the child myself. There's another classification that's not shown here, and that is comp. So I want to show you what that is. And that is when a child, I'm going to pull up the report. Again, I apologize if you can't read this, but under both eyes open, it says unable to verify comprehension. That is an important distinction, because what that means is that this particular child, which is me, did not demonstrate that I understood the concept of the matching game. Or my vision is so bad that even with those big letters shown on the screen, I still couldn't see. So we don't know, is it that I don't comprehend, or is it that I've got a gross visual deficit? Either way, that is considered a not pass. So we have comp, we have proctor refer, and then we have a failure by EyeSpy, an intrinsic failure, playing the game, and they couldn't pass the test. So you can do a summary report. You can print the individual reports. You could print all the reports that are shown on the screen individually by pressing the print all 18 vision reports. You can change what's displayed on the report, what language, and you can also export your data into Excel. So that's the demo, and I could spend all day demonstrating everything in the software, and you guys would hate me, but I love all the different things that the software can do. So don't get me started. But if you have questions, not just during the webinar, but subsequent to the webinar, I would be delighted, honored, and privileged to answer any questions you might have. What I do want to do very briefly is show you diagrammatically and photographically what it looks like in use. And so here are two photos, different angles, but a couple things I want to point out. The distance, so forgive me for just a second because I want to see if I can actually do this. So the distance from that child's eye, let's see if I can manage to do this. No, I can't. Huh. Let's see. I really am trying. Okay. The distance from this child's eye all the way to this computer screen is 10 feet. And I'm going to show you the supplies that you get in just a second. But again, no matter what diagram we're looking at, right, that distance is 10 feet. The question is how do you measure 10 feet? Well, I don't know if you see that white cable laying on the floor there, but that's the mouse extension cable that we provide you. That mouse extension cable is exactly, you guessed it, 10 feet. So before you plug it into the computer as a mouse extension cable, because as you know, the mice, the wire that comes with the mice, you know, it's not 10 feet or 15 feet, right? So we give you a mouse extension cable. You plug the mouse into one end of the cable, the other end of the cable into the computer, and now you have slack so that you're not tripping over the cable. But prior to plugging it in, you use that as your measuring tape, so to speak. This is the other thing that I wanted to point out. Change it in color. This is what I alluded to earlier. I had kids waiting in the back, you know, perhaps not this close to the child under test, but this child is looking at what this kid is doing while they're playing the game. So I can test all these kids, and I've got all these children in the back, and by the time it's their turn to sit down and play the game, they know exactly what to do. The only other thing that I'll mention is that the distance between each computer should be at least 2 feet. So this distance between the computers should be at least 2 feet. And that way you can stand in this space between the computers without obscuring their line of sight. Okay? So I know that most of this is probably common sense to all of you, and so my apologies for kind of even talking about it, but I just wanted to point out some things that were not necessarily obvious to me. Probably obvious to you, but not obvious to me initially. The only other thing that I would mention is that unless I've got super compliant children, especially when I'm typing their information into the computer screen, I take that mouse away from them and I bring it over here. Because if they're moving the mouse and I'm trying to do my data entry, it typically doesn't work well. So anyway, that's as much as I'm going to talk about that. These are the items that we provide you. So there's the mouse extension cable that I referred to earlier, the 10-foot extension cable. During the vision screening, you heard about the red-blue glasses or the colored glasses for the stereo testing. So that's what those are. These are reversible occluders. So for children that are not wearing an eye patch, you use, are not wearing corrective lenses, you just use this. And all you do is, you cover whatever eye is being told, cover the left eye, you put them on like this. And then when you're ready, you just literally slide them off, flip them over, and now that lens is over here, and the the open frame is over here, so you're occluding the other eye. Here's the reusable eye patch we talked about. Near stereo card, that will be used when requested by the software. So what happens is if a child is not wearing glasses and they fail stereo at 10 feet, you use this card to test them at 18 inches. And it tells you that in the software. HOTV response panel, this is used with special needs kids, where you basically play the game on their behalf. They use their hand to point to the letter that they're seeing up on the screen, and then you're essentially playing on their behalf if they don't have the motor skills to control the mouse themselves. I should say something here real quick. This is just more me opining about something that's not really necessary, but I will anyway. My hope is that every special needs child gets a professional examination, eye examination every year. So anyway, I'm done talking about that, but that's it's just my opinion. No one asked for it. My apologies. Quick start guide. This you can actually download from our website, and sometimes that's actually better. That way you can burn off as many copies as you want. But the most important part is, from my perspective, is when I'm bringing in volunteers to actually do the vision screening, I need them to help me set up the computers and understand how the moon needs to be set up. So that's what there's 4 pages to this, but the first page is set up. And it is literally, just put the computers on a table and plug them into an outlet. Do not run them off a battery. Adjust the screen so that there's no glare from where the child is going to sit. Make sure that you set up another, row of desks and chairs 10 feet away. Connect the mouse. Once you've got the testing distance, you connect the mouse, right? This is where I said leave 2 feet in between the computers there. Make sure that every station has the mouse and the glasses, both the stereo and the occluding glasses and the patches and all that. Then, launch EyeSpy. So I know it seems somewhat sophomoric, but I wanted to point that out, that quick start guide is actually helpful for when you're bringing in proctors. Like I had mentioned on the onset, VisionQuest2020.org, this organization is committed to providing a lot of support for EyeSpy. There is some support that the organization cannot offer, but the vast majority of support that is necessary is offered through VisionQuest. And in fact, quite a bit is offered through the website. So I just wanted to point out a couple small things. One, if you go under resources and go down to materials, so click on resources, then materials, here's the quick start guide, the user's manual, which Danielle has already read, which is unbelievable. I thought I was the only person that read user's manuals, but I'm in much better spirits now that I know someone else did. Parent info, which is also available in Spanish. If you lose your near stereo card or your response panel, you can reprint those. There's an informational brochure if you wanted to share that with parents, whatever. Also under resources is a library, which has various sections, which you may or may not find helpful, but it's available for you, not just for you, but also for the parents and finding an eye doctor and assistance with exams and glasses. And here's one other thing. In order for EyeSpy to be successful in your school, it is unbelievably important that your IT professionals are involved. They are instrumental in virtually every aspect of what you do as educators and health professionals. I don't need to tell you that. But EyeSpy, because it's a software product and not, I don't know, a standalone piece of hardware that doesn't require their involvement, please have your IT, your computer people involved from the very beginning. So if you go to resources and go to installation, here's a document just for your IT department. and it will really, I would hope it's something that they would appreciate, because it gives them a lot of details about EyeSpy 2020 and how to install it and all of that. So we're almost done. For those of you that are still awake, I'm grateful. We're almost done. Okay, so support. You have unlimited access to webinars, the materials and videos that are available on EyeSpy2020.com. You can email us anytime. We try to respond as quickly as possible. I would allow a day or two, but we really try to get back to you immediately. And there's telephone support as well. So I'm going to provide you that information. Here's a way to email me directly. Now, you can also contact us through the website, but the fastest way to get to me is with that email address. In fact, I'm going to type it in the chat box so that you guys can copy and paste that right out of there. But I'm also going to provide you another piece of information, and that is my direct cell phone number, which can be used for texting or calling. It is a cell phone, so I put that in the chat box as well. I want you to have direct access to me. That is, I've never had anyone, quote unquote, abuse it. And really, quite frankly, once you contact me, then theoretically, I've got your number as well. So there's no secrets there. But I want you to have access to me, because if there's an issue, I want you to have resolution very quickly. Now, I've got large staff, and there's people all over the country. And like I said, we're used internationally as well. I can do this with confidence because your product works very robustly, very consistently, and I just don't think you're going to have any issues. But if you do, if you have questions, comments, concerns, whatever, that's how you get in touch with me. And you can also go to EyeSpy2020.com. It's got essentially the same information, but you don't have to do that. I want to thank all of you, and I mean that. This has been, for the past almost 20 years, this has been my life's work. And so I always feel very privileged when I get to share what we do with dedicated people like you, and I get great questions and everything else. It's very helpful. One last thing I'm going to show you very quickly, and then I promise we're done. Some of you may be shy and not want to be mean to me or the staff. So you want to send feedback anonymously. So open up EyeSpy, make sure you're connected to the internet. You can go to EyeSpy and click on that feedback button. If you missed it, it was right here, feedback. And you can say whatever you want, because I have the staff, no one knows where this comes from. So you submit a comment, and we have absolutely no idea where it comes from. It is critical that if you're using this feedback tool, you gotta say, this is, Daniela, like I need to know, this is my number or your email address or whatever, because we literally have no idea where it's coming from. So when I say it's anonymous, we're not saying that tongue in cheek. If you're going to use that to get in touch with us, please, please, please let us know who you are, because we have no way. If you're going to use the Vision Quest website, which I'll show you very quickly, if you're going to use that, if you go under EyeSpy, let's see, resources, contact us, that's obviously a little bit different, because you're filling out information here, and then we know who you are. So you can be mean that way as well. We like all types of feedback. Our feelings won't get hurt, but we really do want to hear from you. So if there's a way for you to do that, either through the application itself or through our website, we look forward to hearing from you. And with that, I'm done. Thank you again.